Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Take two. Good afternoon. And happy Valentine's Day, everybody. And welcome to Songs'26, The Power of Love, our February Hearts happening here at Cedar Grove. You've been enjoying the music of Jennifer Gosselin. She will be accompanying today's musical guest, Natasha Witherspoon, so stay tuned for more. As you know, if you've joined us before, Hearts Happenings are monthly, place-based experiences designed to foster a shared sense of place and community by exploring what is right here beneath our feet. Across the hall, the Pink Room Bar and Reading Room is open, serving a variety of beverages and also featuring a collection of books on local history, nature, architecture, and more. Our program today is The Power of Love, and we are going to be exploring that theme from a variety of angles, including poetry, music, history, dance, and visual art. This event is inspired by and in honor of George Moses Horton, the enslaved 19th century North Carolina poet with a unique connection to this very place. Horton's poetic gift was first recognized by UNC students in the mid-19th century who heard him reciting poetry while selling vegetables on the Chapel Hill campus. In awe of his talent, they began paying him to compose love poems for their sweethearts. Richard Torrance, who grew up in this house, was one of those students, commissioning Horton to write not one, but two poems to two young ladies whose affection he was seeking. Although Richard Torrance was not destined to marry either of those women, it was not because of the poetry. From eloquent poems of love and friendship, to odes on the beauty of nature, to heartbreaking and personal laments of his inescapable situation as an enslaved person. Horton's exquisite talent and ability to move his audience is apparent in all his work. So where does our theme, the power of love, come in relation to Horton and his poetry? There are many answers to that question. But one is that it was Horton's love of language that started this whole thing. As we will learn today, his love of words was so strong that he taught himself to read, and his love of poetry so intense that he willed himself to create his own. In so doing, he achieved more than anyone thought possible against the cruelest of odds. That is the real power of love. To transfix, transform, and transcend. Our theme today, The Power of Love, is also a nod to the title of one of Horton's poems, The Powers of Love. I'd like to take a moment now to read selected stanzas from that poem to help set the tone for today's program. Listen for his lyricism, visualize his imagery, feel the rhythm, the meter, and the rhyme scheme. We will learn more about Horton's genius and artistry in just a bit from our keynote speaker. The Powers of Love. It lifts the poor man from his cell to fortune's bright alcove. Its mighty sway few can tell. Mid envious foes it conquers ill. There's nothing half like love. Ye weary strangers void of rest, who late through life have strove. Like the late bird which seeks its nest, if you would hence in truth be blessed, light on the bough of love. Let clouds of danger rise and roar, and hope's firm pillars move. With storms behind and death before, oh grant me this, I crave no more, there's nothing half like love. When nature wakes soft pity's coo, the hawk deserts the dove. Compassion melts the creature through, with palpitations felt by few, the wrecking throbs of love. Let surly discord take its flight from wedlock's peaceful grove, while union breaks the arm of fight, with darkness swallowed up in light. Oh, what is there like love? We've got an amazing lineup in store for you today. We are excited to welcome award-winning poet, teacher, National Slam champion, and inaugural poet laureate of the city of Charlotte, Junious Ward. We welcome back award-winning actor, playwright, and director Michael Connor to tell the story of George Moses Horton in what has become a cherished Hearts tradition. We're thrilled to present Charlotte-based nonprofit contemporary dance company Baran Dance. We'll spend a lovely eco-minute with Abigail Jennings. But first, to kick off the festivities, it's my pleasure to introduce our HEARTSongs'26 musical guest, Natasha Witherspoon. Natasha is an international opera singer and vocal coach whose career bridges classical excellence, cultural preservation, and community impact. She made her operatic debut as a soloist at the International Spoleto Festival and has toured internationally with Porgy and Bess throughout Russia, Greece, Latvia, Poland, and Estonia. A cross-sector vocalist, she is also widely acclaimed for her powerful and authentic interpretations of Negro spirituals. Accompanying Natasha today is Jennifer Gosselin, who provided the beautiful prelude music as you entered this afternoon. Jennifer is an accomplished collaborative pianist and accompanist who has worked extensively as an opera assistant, vocal coach, and solo and ensemble pianist, and has performed at the Mongolian, Egyptian, and Russian embassies, as well as the Kennedy Center. She now calls Charlotte home, where she works with Carolina Voices and subs with Opera Carolina and the Charlotte Symphony. They have put together a program for us today that takes us on a journey of love across time and place through song. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it's our pleasure to present Natasha Witherspoon, accompanied by Jennifer Gosselin.
To share this space with you all today. But before I sing, I want to honor the land beneath us. We gather today at historic Cedar Grove in Huntersville, land originally stewarded by the Catawba Nation. We also acknowledge the enslaved African men, women, and children whose labor shaped this region and whose names were not always recorded. But here at Hearts, the R stands for, anyone know? Reunion. And the Reunion Project uncovered over 143 enslaved descendants here at Cedar Grove. There is something powerful about standing on soil like this today. Nothing hidden, nothing theatrical, except for this gold dress. Just truth, history, and breath. And today is Valentine's Day, a day dedicated to love. It is also Black History Month. At first glance, those may feel a little separate, but one romantic and one historical. But for African Americans in this country, love and history have always been intertwined. Love was resistance. Love was survival. Love it's kept families intact when systems tried to tear them apart. Anyone heard of Smithfield Community Coalition? They're a part of the Hearts Collaborative right here when you get off exit 28. Right there, you turn right at that QT. You know that QT, I'm sure somebody's filled up with that QT. Okay. Smithfield Community Coalition is right there preserving the largest intact African American neighborhood in Mecklenburg County. And they're doing amazing work, so I'm going to challenge you to look that up whenever you leave here. That's a great, tangible way to honor this month and learning a little bit more about the land that we share here in Cornelius. So the music I'm sharing today is a collection of Italian love songs written centuries ago in another language, in another culture. And yet here I stand, a Black opera singer in America, interpreting them. That alone is part of Black history, because this art form was not originally built with us in mind. And yet we mastered it, shaped it, and claimed space within it. So today, these Italian songs, this first set, met here with Southern soil on during Black History Month and Valentine's Day. And something beautiful happens when you intersect the two. what I just said. Okay, O mio bambino caro is from the opera Gianni Schicchi, written by Giacomo Puccini. Anybody heard of Puccini? Puccini, okay, all right, we got that. All right, so Loretta, it seemed like anybody heard of the word mourir? Mourir, what does that seem like it sounds like? Die, there you go, that's it. That was actually a love song. And for me, that's so interesting because the passion that was intertwined in that song, the character Loretta is pleading with her dad. Can I please marry this man? Or I'm gonna die. How dramatic. No, but seriously, I just love that connection of that aria to today's relevancy. We have so many things that we face every single day that challenges our relationships, our love and passion for one another, inside and outside, our internal and external experiences. Yet when we choose love, it's something that profound happens. And I just want to commend those of you that are vastly exercising love despite what's going on around you. This next piece is Porgi Amor, and we'll talk a little bit about that after.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, that was Natasha Witherspoon and Jennifer Gosselin. Stay tuned. They will be continuing this story of love told through song throughout our program today. We're excited to showcase today some of the best in local dance, which fits right in, I think, because artful dance truly is poetry in motion. And as with poetry, through dance, artists can express complex emotions with an economy and an immediacy that can be truly sublime. Hearts is pleased to welcome Baran Dance to the stage. Baran Dance is a Charlotte-based nonprofit contemporary dance company founded by Audrey Baran. Known for creating accessible and exciting movement experiences, they bring a bold physicality and thoughtful artistry to their performances. Dancing today are Sharon Dunson and Danielle Roman Curtis. The piece is entitled Before I Forgot, and the choreography is by Carolina Quiros Oteroa. The music is called Blemish and was composed and recorded by Sweat Transfer. This performance explores our theme of love from a different angle, and to tell you more, it is my pleasure to introduce Audrey Baran.
Hi everybody, my name is Audrey Baran. Thanks for having us here, Hearts. What a beautiful day and space, and just opportunity to share space with you. Randolph pretty much covered everything that we are sharing today, but again, we're a nonprofit dance company here in Charlotte. We started as a company in 2012. We're in our 14th season now, I'm doing the math right, so that's exciting. We are all We are invested in creating community relevant and inclusive dance experiences for Charlotte through performances, through collaborations with other artists. The music that you hear today in this piece is by a local artist who again goes by the name of Sweat Transfer. We collaborate with visual artists too, culinary artists sometimes, so if you want to partner with us, please reach out. We do have some brochures and cards out there on the table. We offer mentorship programs for emerging and evolving dancers as well. We partner with immigrant and refugee organizations to create cross-cultural dance exchanges. So lots going on. Yeah, that was pretty much it. So without further ado, thank you. And this is before I forgot. Thanks for having us.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, that was Baran Dance. Thank you so much. We're so excited to have them. All right, next up, I would like to turn it back over to Natasha and Jennifer as they continue weaving a tapestry of love through song.
I don't know if I could do all of that. Right? I don't know if I could do all of that. I was like, oh, my knees, all the things. That's so serious. I'm a mom of 3 boys, and so that is the epitome of love. Let me tell you. Going to these games, I go and there are basketball games, and they're doing soccer and all these things, and you're out there in the cold, you're out there in the heat. That's love. After long work days, early morning sports, any parents in here? Yeah, that's love. So I'm excited to be able to do this next set. As you know, we started with Italian. I learned very early in learning opera that it's very important to have a diverse understanding of languages. So as an opera singer, I oftentimes am typically asked, do you speak in other languages? And I give them that face. Because presumably a lot of people would assume that if you can sing in these languages, you can speak in these languages. My first experience outside of the US as an opera singer took me to Russia. And we flew into St. Petersburg, Russia, and the question that was met with me when we had our tour of Porgy and Bess and we arrived at the hotel, the question that I still have etched in my head is, what you black girl doing here? And I'm like, oh my goodness, I am black, and I'm singing opera, and I'm in this beautiful hotel. But as an opera singer growing up here in the South, I didn't even have the full understanding of what a black young opera singer from York, South Carolina would look like if she traveled to another country. That cultural disconnect was there. But in that becoming, in that knowing, I discovered that no matter how I may be perceived from one country to the next or across waters, one thing remains, and that is, I must love who I am, whether I am across seas or on land. And so that love song, knowing that, or that love recognition of self, was one thing that I decided to explore a little. And in that, I said, okay, should I sing Italian and French and German and Latin and all of these songs and languages, or should I really dig deep into who I am as an African American opera singer in America? I then said I wanted to dedicate my path towards understanding how Negro spirituals impacted the land that I was on, the land that I came from. And it took me on a historical journey that was very, very rewarding. And here I stand today realizing that they both can coexist no matter where we are on our journeys as artists, as people. Coexistence can happen because love is love is love is love. Whether you're black, red, white, orange, all colors, the rainbow, hearts, love remains. So this next song, which very seldomly I studied, is an art song by Samuel Barber called Sure on This Shining Night. And I'm very excited to sing this because one thing that I've noticed that HEART stands for is really acknowledging not just the land, but the environment, right? And it's so important that we honor the land that we're on. We take care of the land that we're on. I'm trying to teach my boys that quite often. It's kind of hard. But it's so very, very important. And so this is a love song to the universe and just in observance of the night and what the night means and what it brings to self. So please enjoy Sure on This Shining Night by Samuel Barber. Too much at the beginning. I'm trying to stay on time with this. You know, opera singers, we have this horrible reputation for being divas and always late, and guess what? Some of those things are true for me. The always late part is absolutely true. But today, I did come prepared with another song, but I wanted to be cognizant of time. So since I still have the floor, I didn't get to sing my first audition piece. Now I want to go back to a little Italian for you. I auditioned for the South Carolina Governor's School for the Arts and Humanities in Greenville, and this was the first Italian piece that I ever learned. And I love it because the words, it's "Se tu mami," if you love me, in Italian. And I think that it's the most flirtatious of all of the operas, pieces that I have in my rep. I'd say for this one, you will see another side of Natasha that's not necessarily so serious about love. Okay? Say it to mommy. Se tu m'ami, se tu sospiri sol per me, gentil del tuo amor, ma se passi che soletto
sugito, facilmente ad ingannar. Pastorino, sei sugito, facilmente ad ingannar, facilmente ad ingannar. Bella rosa porporina, odio si riarrà, con la scusa della spina, ove poi lo sprezzerà, dove poi lo sprezzerà. Ma io in consiglio, io te che me sedirò, non perché mi passi in giro, gli altri fiori sprezzerò. Se tu m'ami, se tu sospiri sol per me, gentil pastor, o dolore dei tuoi martiri, o del letto del tuo amor, ma se pensi che sul letto io ti debbrei amar. Pastorino, sei sugito, facilmente ad ingannar. Pastorino, sei sugito, facilmente ad ingannar, facilmente ad ingannar.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, wow. I'm sure you share my sentiment that sounds fantastic to hear Natasha's voice in these echoing in this space is powerful, it's moving. Typically when we have a vocalist, we have a vocal mic for them to sing into, and we use our sound system to sort of accentuate the acoustic sound. In Natasha's case, we soon realized that the vocal mic was not necessary, because her voice is more than enough to fill this space, so sounds fantastic, guys. All right, next, I would like, and it's my honor, to introduce the new visual art exhibit in our Center Hall Gallery entitled Love Transcends. In partnership with 9189 Studio Gallery in Charlotte, Hearts presents the work of three exceptional multidisciplinary artists curated for this very event: Tina Alberni, Princess Curitin, and Annie Todd. To tell us more, please welcome Joanne Rogers of 9189 Studio Gallery.
Hi everyone. Hi everyone. I'm Joanne Rogers. I'm the founder and executive director for 9189 Studio Gallery. I'm located in the Vapa Center, 700 North Tryon. It's about 20 minutes south of here. I'm going to talk about 9189. 9189 represents mainly local artists, works with local artists, and right now we are located again in the Vapa Center. We serve artists of many different mediums, mainly visual arts. And today we have for you two of the three artists that are showing here in this beautiful gallery. Again, my partnership with Hugh Torrance House is, I love working with them. I completely love their programming, and it definitely suits my mission, so it's a pleasure to bring our local artists and celebrate our local artists in this type of venue, at these types of events. I really do hope you take a chance to enjoy the art out here, and also to visit us at 9189 Studio Gallery. Right now I'm going to bring up two of the artists. We're missing Princess Curitin today. She had a family emergency. She is the artist that does the more 3D artwork out there, and she'll be joining us at the closing, I'm sure. But I'd like to bring up Tina Alberni and then Annie Todd.
Hi everybody. As Natasha just mentioned earlier, you know, this planet is a beautiful place we live in, and I
as an artist, feel like I have a platform to speak about how we could be better stewards of the world. So my work on the walls here is speaking about endangered animals. And the loud colors, or the bright colors, is sort of my way of kind of shouting, like, wake up, see me. You know, we all have a part in this. We all can contribute. Like, for instance, the llama piece or the alpaca piece, you know, it talks about sustainability. So, you know, if you are buying a piece that has alpaca wool, maybe you can source it so it's coming from a sustainable place. Because a lot of times when alpacas are sheared, they're hurt, they're abused. So that's just one example of many. Every piece has, you know, its very deep meaning. So just think about how we consume things, and that's how we can each contribute, because it's a big, you know, if you think about how can I save the planet, well, we can't, but we can each do our part. So that's where my art comes from. So I'm very grateful to be in this space. Thank you, Joanne, for bringing me, and thank you for having me in this space and being able to share my work. It's my privilege and honor to be able to speak about what I love, and it's trying to bring awareness to everybody. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Ani Todd, and my work is primarily drawing, mostly in pen, pencil, oil, pastel, chalk pastel. I'm a storyteller by nature, so the 5 smaller pieces, those belong to me, and I think it was just perfect for the theme for today. And all my pieces, what I want to do, I kind of started off comics were my love. And that was the thing I loved. Each partition had its own story in and of itself, but it was also part of a greater story. So that was when I first started, the one main piece called In Search of Love, where we're all searching for love in different ways. Either it's, you know, love between 2 people, whether it's romantic, or between family, the love that's divine, we're all in search of it. But in this case, I just decided to just create a love story where someone is in search of love, and then he finds that special person and offers her the flower, and she's like, oh, who, me? And and you know, she receives it, and they all come together. And so that's just kind of a part of the way in which I kind of just create a storyline. So again, thank you, Joanne Rogers. Thank you, Hugh Torrance House. Have always loved the programming, and just thank you and enjoy.
All right, thanks so much, guys. And one of note, when viewing Ani's pieces, which are on the stairs, those are, you mentioned sequential art, and those are to be viewed in, so you would start at the left on the stairs up where the artist's statement is, and then view them in order, descending down from left to right. All right. All right, thanks so much to everybody. And the intermission is right around the corner, and that's going to be a great opportunity to spend some time with the new exhibit in the Center Hall. But first, our next guest, Michael Connor, is an actor, playwright, director, and educator who has appeared in General Hospital, The Color Purple, Homeland, and The Hunger Games. And you may also know him from local appearances with the Davidson Community Players. Or even here at a Hearts event. In addition to all that, Michael is an avid historian, a board member of the Hugh Torrance House and Store, and he is here today to share with us the story of enslaved North Carolina poet George Moses Horton, and speak a little bit about Horton's connection to this place as well. So in what has become a Hearts tradition, he's going to read the book Poet, The Remarkable Story of George Moses Horton by Don Tate and interpret that. So we'll bring Michael up here and get him set up, and here it goes. Center and see if that stool is going to see.
Good. Oh, that's the way it goes. Okay. Hello, everyone. Okay. George Moses Horton, he was born in 1798. So he lived a pretty long time, and that's pretty good because he got his portrait out. He lived to be about 86 or 88 years old. He taught himself to read and write. And his master would never free him. He made money selling his poems when he went to UNC Chapel Hill. He also became a speaker for some of the kids at UNC Chapel Hill during commencement time, as a matter of fact. He wrote acrostics, and he wrote 2 acrostics poems for Richard Allison. Richard Allison is, Richard Allison Torrance of this house. While he was in Chapel Hill, because Richard wanted to get some girlfriends. So these poems that George Moses wrote for him, he didn't get him a girlfriend, all right? Now the poems can be seen in the room over here, the original ones and what, because if you can't read the original printing, you'll see the ones that were out there. He was the first published poet in this area, in the South. And I'm trying to get one of his poems for you. And this poem is called Love. It says, while tracing thy visage, I sink in motion. For no other damsel, wondrous I see. Thy looks are so pleasing, thy charms so amazing. I think of no other, my love, true but thee. With heart-burning rapture, I gaze on thy beauty, and I fly like a bird to the boughs of a tree. Thy looks are so pleasing, thy charms are so amazing. I fancy no other, my love, but thee. Thus ought in the valley I think, and I wonder, why cannot a maid with her lover agree? They look so pleasing, thy charm so amazing. I pine for no other, my true love, but thee. I fly from thy frowns with a heart full of sorrow. Return, pretty damsel, and smile thou on me. By every endeavor I'll try thee forever, and languish until I am fancied for thee. George Moses Horton. Now to tell the story of George. This is the poet, the remarkable story of George Moses Horton by Don Tate. George loved words. He wanted to learn how to read, but George was enslaved. He and his family lived on a farm in Chatham County, North Carolina, where they were forced to work long hours. There wasn't time for much more or anything else to do. Besides, George knew his master would not approve of his slave reading. But that didn't stop George from admiring the language that was all around him. Inspirational words, read from the Bible, hopeful words, delivered in a sermon, lovely, lively words, sung in song. George was determined to learn how to read. When white children studied their books, he lingered nearby. He listened, and as they repeated the letters of the alphabet, soon George could learn how to recite the alphabet himself. His mother would like to help him, but she couldn't. Instead, she gave George one of her most valuable possessions, a Wesley hymnal, a book of songs. It was George's very first book. He scanned the pages trying to make out the letters, but it was no use. He could not read the words. Then George found an old spelling book. It was tattered and torn. Some pages were missing, but it was enough to get him started. George thumbed through the pages. He recognized some of the letters. At night, when he should have been reading, After a long day of work, George studied by firelight. His eyes burned from the smoke, and soon he could make out a few words. Before long, he understood entire sentences. And over time, George taught himself to read. Now, from that point forward, George not only loved words, he could read and understand them too. George read verses from the New Testament. He read books, newspaper articles, advertisement, whatever he could find. But most of all, George read poems. He loved beautiful poetry. From early morning until late at night, George sounded cattle. He rented cattle on his master's farm. Where he worked, George composed his own poetry, mingling his words with the same of the familiar sounds that he heard. He hadn't learned how to write his poems down yet, so he committed them to memory. Words and rhythms were stored inside his head. His verses swayed with emotion, like the music of Sunday services. They kept him strong as he grew to be a young man. When George was 17, his master decided to split up his cattle and his estate. So he divided his possessions, the land, the cattle, the wagons, the tools, among his family. Slaves were considered to be property too. So George's family was separated. George was given to his master's son. He feared he would never see his mother, brothers, or sisters again. George toiled in the fields on his new master's property. It was disagreeable work, but he found a little relief on Sundays. On that day, George walked 8 miles to the village of Chapel Hill, to the campus of the University of North Carolina. There he sold fruit and vegetables grown on his master's farm. He didn't mind the long walk, though. George welcomed the opportunity to just get away. At first, the college students teased George. To distract himself from their insults, George recited his poetry, words sweet as the fruit piled high in his cart, sprung from his lips. Every eye grew wide and every mouth fell open at the sound of George's voice, uttering beautiful verses. The students were awestruck when they found out that he had composed them himself. News of the slave poet raced through the campus like a brisk flowing river, and students swarmed in close to hear George perform his verses. Some of them decided to help George. They gave him their books, English grammar, and dictionaries, history and oratory, classic literature and poetry. George soaked up them with everything he had, subjects like a sponge. And one day, a student requested a poem for his sweetheart. George created a verse for the woman. He dictated the poem to the student, who wrote it down neatly. The young lady swooned when she read it. After that, other students wanted George's poems, and they were willing to pay for them. George composed more than a dozen poems a week, selling them for 25 cents, some for 75 cents. Some paid him with their fine suits and shoes. Instead of money, in time, George dressed as sharply as the students themselves. With money, nice clothes, and newfound status, George felt freer than he ever had in all his life. But he was not free. He remained the property of his master. George continued to work on the farm. During the work week, and visit Chapel Hill on the weekends. Now, the story of the slave poet reached the wife of a professor. Caroline Lee Hintz was a professional writer and published poet. George's poems affected her deeply. Some made her smile, while others made her cry. She sought out George, taught him how to write his poems on paper with a pen. And after so many years of memorizing verses, George could now write them down. Caroline arranged for George's poems to be printed in the Gazette, the newspaper of her hometown, Lancaster, Massachusetts. Now George was a published poet. His poems protested his enslavement. No other American slave had done that before. And soon George's work appeared in other newspapers, including Freedom's Journal, the first African-American owned newspaper in the country. George's heart could barely contain his growing pride. With money from his writing and odd jobs, George was able to pay his master for his time so that he could live in Chapel Hill and work as a poet. Now, it was an illegal arrangement, but his master didn't care. George was now a full-time writer, but he still was not free. In time, George published published The Hope of Liberty, his first book. He wanted to use his earnings to purchase his freedom. Now, when editors at the Freedom's Journal learned of his plan, they tried to give money to help him. Influential people joined the cause. Newspaper articles, newspaper men, a college president, a governor. They offered a great deal of money, but George's master refused to sell his valuable slave. Meanwhile, abolitionists in the North worked to end slavery. They published books. They printed posters and pamphlets. They blanketed the South with their calls for enslaved people to rise up again and against their masters. Slaves who could read told the others their message. As a result, more slaves did fight back, and some even killed their masters. Fear ruled the South. New laws were passed in North Carolina. People who printed and distributed anti-slavery material were penalized. And yet, it became illegal to teach a slave how to read or write. Now it was too dangerous for George to write poems that protested slavery, but he didn't stop writing altogether. He published his second book, The Poetical Works of George M. Horton, which contained poems about life, love, death, and friendship. In 1861, war broke out between the North and the South, mainly over the issue of slavery. Most of the students went off to fight to defend the South. With few people left on campus to purchase his poems, George had to go back to work to earn money, to pay for his time away from his master. He had to return to the farm. And one of his poems read, "Am I sadly cast aside on misfortune's rugged tide? Will the world my pains derive forever?" The Civil War raged on for 4 long years. And in 1863, President Abraham Lincoln set the nation on a new course by signing the Emancipation Proclamation. Now that soon led to the end of slavery. At the age of 66, George was finally free. Now that he was a free man, George no longer had to remain on the farm. Later that spring, he packed his pens and papers and left. George went west with the Union Army, camping along the way. He wrote poems about his travels, about his family and friends back home, and about all the things he had experienced in his long, long life. George's love of words had taken him on a great journey. Words made him strong. Words allowed him to dream. Words loosened the chains of bondage long before his last day as a slave. George lived to be 88 or 86 years old. Wow. Thank you, everyone.
All right, one more round of applause for Michael Collins. All right, a quick announcement before we break for intermission. We are pleased today to offer our Hugh Torrance House and Store pop-up market today in the Pink Room. That's right, for today's event, we have brought the Hugh Torrance House and Store to you by offering a curated selection of some of our most popular local artisan crafts and treats. The Hugh Torrance House and Store, of course, is right next door and is the oldest standing store in North Carolina, and they will be open tomorrow. So if you like our little pop-up market today, be sure and visit tomorrow for more of the same, plus docent-led tours of this important landmark, one of the few remaining 18th century structures in Mecklenburg County. All right, we have arrived at our intermission point. When we return, we'll hear some more fantastic love songs, see what's happening this month in our local ecology, and, of course, our main event, Junious Jay Ward. So, visit the Pink Room, grab a drink, explore the pop-up market, take in the new Center Hall art exhibit, and we'll reconvene here. Let's see, we're running a little behind. Let's say 3:20-ish, if possible. Thanks, guys. See you soon. Hey everybody, we're going to go ahead and welcome you all back into the performance space. Apologies for a slightly shorter than anticipated intermission. We're running just a little bit behind and want to make sure we've got time for all of the content that we're so excited about today. So as you're coming back into the performance space, I'll use that opportunity to let you know a little bit about our next Hearts Happening upcoming event. And this, for our next happening in March, we are taking the show on the road to Statesville, North Carolina, Iredell County, at the Sharp House, the historic Sharp House. This will be our Irish Connections event, which we have typically had here, exploring the history of the Scots-Irish settlers that came down the Great Wagon Road and populated this part of North Carolina. So this time we'll be doing it in Statesville and exploring the history of the Sharp family and this prominent Statesville landmark, the story of the Scots-Irish family who built it. And as with all Hearts events, it will be a place-based experience with the best in not just history, but local music, local art, and focusing on some local ecology and nature as well. So please mark your calendars for March 21st in downtown Statesville for Hearts Irish Connections 26. All right, next up we are going to welcome back Natasha, accompanied by Jennifer, once again for another number. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to them. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Natasha Witherspoon, accompanied by Jennifer Gosselin.
Did you enjoy? Oh my goodness. I hope that the setup will still be there so that I could partake in the shop. Did anyone support the vendor inside? Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. That's a wonderful thing to have during an intermission. And I'm so excited about being in this space and also the meaningful work that Hearts does here as a philanthropic strategist as well by day, because I am still that mom of three to the boys. One of the things that I've found in my work and in my profession that there's a way for me to meaningfully give back as an opera singer, whether that's time or just skill, and partner as well with organizations that are doing things to move forward in preservation and historic landmarks. That opportunity to work with Smithville Community Coalition here as their philanthropic strategist led me to meet Ms. Abigail Jennings, and it has been wonderful to learn more about the Hearts Collaborative and the great meaningful work that happens here. And I'm excited because I am working on a project that many of you may be familiar with the preservation of Brevard's Chapel. Anybody heard of Brevard's Chapel? Yes. Wonderful. So there's an event that's coming up on March the 28th. And I'm excited because there's a way for us all to pitch in and preserve that the longest African American chapel that has been in existence there in Lincoln County. It's a beautiful, beautiful way to give back to the community, especially during this month when so many things are happening around preservation. So I would love to invite you to just learn a little bit more and join alongside me in making sure that we can raise the capital to keep that site alive for that community as well as those that are around Lincoln County. So that's on March the 28th, and it'll be absolutely fabulous. You can learn more if you did receive any printed materials or on the website. So this event about love, I'm pretty stoked about because one of my favorite eras to sing in. I love Baroque music, but I am a romantic. Okay. In fact, my first husband proposed to me with his dad's class ring, and I said yes, and I was 18 years old. I'm a romantic. And so, so with that, I'll say this. One of my favorite composers that I've been able to preserve on this journey as a mom and opera singer. Music is chaotic between a 2-year-old and opera. The 2-year-old is singing The Wheels on the Bus, and I'm in my room listening to Debussy. But I love this era because one thing that I appreciate about Claude Debussy is his music between the Romantic era and the Impressionism in music, and it's known as Impressionism in music. Romantic composers like himself emphasize sweeping emotion and dramatic expression. Debussy softened the edges, though. He focused on atmosphere, color, subtlety, and suggestion. Instead of overwhelming feeling, he created emotional landscapes, music that feels like light, shifting across water. He didn't just express emotion, he painted it. So this next piece by Claude Debussy, Bonsoir in French, is one of Debussy's early songs, set to a poem by Paul Bourget. The text reflects on the beauty of a calm evening as the sun sets and the river flows gently onward. The poem reminds us, just as the river flows to the sea, so too do our lives move forward. Beauty is fleeting, youth is fleeting. Love must be embraced while it is present. It is not dramatic love. It is reflective love. Tender, philosophical, and almost whispering.
Couche,
That was beautiful. And when I introduced Natasha at the top of our program, I focused on her accomplishments in the world of music. However, she is a woman of many talents and a wearer of many hats. And one of those, as she mentioned, is community involvement and leadership through fundraising. In addition to singing with the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra, Natasha also played a key role in fundraising efforts to preserve the first African-American opera house in Pittsburgh. And now, as she alluded to, she is involved in the Hearts effort to save Brevard's Chapel in Denver. So just to reiterate what she was telling you about, this landmark is in danger of demolition. Allowing that to happen is not an option. Saving it not only preserves the building, it preserves the stories of hope and dignity that that building holds, and shows that we as a community value these things enough to keep them alive for those who come after us. So if you have ever lamented the disappearance of our old places and the stories and the wisdom they hold, now is your time to act. And saving Brevard's Chapel is another way that the power of love can triumph. So to that end, mark your calendars for the March 28th Hearts United Gala that Natasha told you about. It will be a true place-based Hearts celebration with music, history, dance, a fantastic dinner, and a chance to visit another Lincoln County landmark, Mount Pila Church, that is otherwise open to visitors but once a year. For tickets and table reservations, please go to our www.heartscollaborative.org. All right, next up is, of course, our main event. Junious Jay Ward is right around the corner, but first we've got our Eco Minute, and this is the time in these Hearts happenings when we check in with what's happening now in our local ecology. In keeping with our theme, today's edition is all about love in the natural world and how it has been celebrated historically and how we can live in harmony with these natural cycles. To learn more, please join me in welcoming the lovely Abigail Jennings to the mic.
All right. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. It's great to be with you, and it's great to see all of you. And I can't believe that we've been doing this for 5 years now, and we've come a long way, and every year building on the previous year's stories. So whenever I'm deciding what are we going to talk about, I kind of look at what's happening on that day. Well, today, Valentine's Day. It's like, okay, let's look at the nature and history connected to Valentine's Day. Well, if you take a peek, I'm not going to take time to talk about it. There's not a lot of love in that history. So I looked around in February for some other celebrations that might share a little bit more love, interestingly enough. And so, oh boy, why didn't that change? Hold on, I'm so sorry. I don't know why that didn't go. Okay, pause. That's not like being moved. Oh, baby. I know I can't. I don't think I can do it.
May have to extend the display again.
Yeah. Oh my goodness gracious. Okay. I'm going to talk you through it. I wish you could see my pretty presentation.
Can I try to help?
If anybody wants to come really in 2 minutes,
Okay.
I'll take it in 2 minute help you can get me. Yeah, sure. Any helpers? Well, since I've got a another extra second. About the Valentine's part, everybody, it does mean love, and that's our what we all celebrate here. But as I like to take threads back into time, if you take the thread back in time on Valentine's Day, you will see its origins, which it was a pretty bloody time for Valentine's, seriously. So, what I'm going to talk about, I am going to start talking. If you guys haven't figured out how to be fabulous. Maybe we're going to get it? No. Okay. Okay. So the thank you for trying. I appreciate it. I have absolutely no idea why it's not working, but I'm gonna just go need it. We can't get the presentation up.
Just paint a picture with
Okay.
your words.
All right. Okay, thanks, honey. Okay, I'm gonna lose the crowd here, so we're gonna.
Just keep it on that screen.
Take the little one that you want to change.
Huh. Just keep it on that
Yeah.
screen.
Okay, I don't know.
Keep it on the main screen.
So anyway,
There it is.
so what I'm trying, maybe we did it. Okay, so what do we have here in nature right now? We have a lot of love. Love is in the air. And so today we're going to talk about love in nature and celebrating nature stirrings in early February. And so the historical roots of nature celebrations in February, as I mentioned, not Valentine's Day, we're going to look at a different February celebration, Groundhog Day. So if you, February 2nd, we know our Groundhog Day. And if you go and you research and you say, when did it begin? That thread will take us back to February 2nd, 1887, where we had our first technical Groundhog Day. But history did not start there for Groundhog Day. It has very ancient roots for this tradition that I found very interesting, which date back to Celtic and Germanic celebrations. So why did they use a groundhog? Because that's what we have here. But in Europe, they often used hedgehogs or badgers. So just kind of an interesting twist there. And they would do the same thing. They would watch them come out of their burrow and decide what that meant when spring is coming. And the same time, if we go even further back, is a special time because it was celebrated as the halfway point between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. So this was the time for an ancient Celtic festival known as Imbolc. And that was a celebration of the return of light. So, after this new time of year, you may have noticed light is a little different. It's got a very beautiful touch to it. And we're starting to see the very first things come out of the ground. And this was a celebration, when we think of spring celebrations, the flowers are blooming. This is a celebration of nature for what we don't see, what they knew was coming, about those first little sprouts coming out of the earth, about the seeds that are going to be coming forth in spring. And it's also about coming out of darkness of winter and into the light. And so these mammals, they were symbolic of that, from coming out of their burrows and into the light, just as the wildlife comes out of their dens. This is the time the bluebirds are out shopping. I don't know if you have a bluebird house, but a lot of times you'll see couples come along and they're checking it out. Does mama like it? Or let's go try another house. But they're out there shopping and the wildlife is beginning their breeding. Unfortunately, along with this, February is the highest number of animal casualties because of their breeding. So we really have to take care of in this time of year. Skunks, foxes, coyotes, raccoons are all breeding. Males often travel more than 10 miles to go and find a mate. And so their minds are not looking both ways. So they are on their path In addition, there is what is called the hunger gap in February. So all the animals, they ate up a whole lot before they went into hibernation, but those fat reserves have depleted. So they're out there looking for food, and it is scarce. And so their minds are also not on when they're foraging alongside the road, they're not thinking of those cars either. So they're weaker and they're less cautious. So the other reasons, territorial disputes, their minds are on other things. So unfortunately, their peak travel times are exactly when we have rush hour. So early morning and dusk, it makes it harder to see. So hopefully, the more people that we can share this with can take care and just watch for the wildlife. But thankfully, many animals avoid the roads and they coexist with us safely in our woods, above in the trees, below in the ground, and they're all around us. Just because you might not see them, they are here. And there are ways we can support them. One biggie, simple, avoiding pesticides and herbicides. Not only does this help our animals, it also helps us. And we do have it, there is definitely a food chain here. So, I'm only killing a spider. Well, what's the spider gonna eat? I'm only doing this, but it's all part of a network. Another thing we can do is to plant native species. So native species, especially fruit-bearing native species, like the serviceberry, provide the birds and wildlife much additional food sources, because if you think about it, all of our subdivisions, those were their grocery stores. So they don't have what they used to have around us, so we can help them. So on to close here, I just want to say it's a great time for wildlife watching in February. So if you take a moment in nature, look into those trees and those woods, you never know what you might see. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, up next is our main event, keynote speaker, Junious Jay Ward. First, I'd like to take an opportunity to thank our sponsors for today's event, Lake Norman Realty, Blue Harbor Bank, and of course, our Heart Circle members, many of which are here with us today, so thank you. I'd also like to thank our staff and volunteers, Nicole Schauflin, Rob Birchfield, Lauren Ewald, Greg Lewis, Cameron Kellum, and Heidi Maggie. Junious Jay Ward is an Emmy-nominated poet and teaching artist living in Charlotte. He is a National Slam champion, an individual World Poetry Slam champion, author of 2 acclaimed collections of poetry, Sing Me a Lesser Wound, and Composition. Jay currently serves as Charlotte's inaugural Poet Laureate and is a 2023 Academy of American Poets Laureate Fellow and current writer-in-residence for Charlotte Lit. Ward has attended Bread Loaf Writers Conference, Callaloo, The Watering Hole, and Tin House Winter Workshop. His work can be found in Columbia Journal, 4-Way Review, Diagram, Diode Poetry Journal, and many others. And this, however, is probably one of the most important things I can tell you about him. Running throughout his work is the idea that language has power, and he has consistently used that power to serve our community through art. Following his presentation, Jay will take questions from the audience and sign copies of his books as well. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, sharing his own work as well as providing some long overdue analysis and appreciation of the work of George Moses Horton, it is our honor to present Junious Jay Ward.
Thank you, Randolph. Thank you, Abigail. Thank you all for being here. I'm particularly excited, actually, to talk about George Moses Horton for a few reasons. I want to share with you how I came across George Moses Horton's work, because I was well into adulthood when I found out about George Moses Horton. First, I'll read a list of things that George is first in. The first published North Carolina author of literature. The first African American to publish a book in the South. The only slave to earn a significant income by selling poems. The only poet of any race to produce a book of poems before he could read, or before he could write. And the only slave to publish 2 volumes of poetry while in bondage. and then releasing a third very, very shortly after his emancipation. Those are some big, big firsts. And the reason it's impactful to me is because maybe 15 years ago, there's a writer from my very, very small town of Rich Square, North Carolina, opposite of Poor, opposite of Circle, Rich Square, North Carolina, in eastern North Carolina, who was a National Book Award winner, very well known in our hometown. And she posted something for Black History Month about 10, 15 years ago that said, "Are you familiar with George Moses Horton? He was born in Northampton County. Northampton County is where I was raised. Northampton County is where Rich Square is." So when I found this out, this very accomplished, important, notable poet was from where I'm from. Yeah, I have to learn more. I have to find out more. So this kind of led me into learning more about George Moses Horton. I don't want to reiterate some of the things that Michael and others have already said today, but I probably will in service of what I want to talk about, because what I want to talk about on Valentine's Day, and as we talk about the power of love, and that beautiful poem, The Powers of Love, that was read earlier, is that when we do think of George Moses Horton abstractly, I think we do first think about love poems. We first think about the love poems that he wrote for students on the campus of UNC Chapel Hill. So I don't want to focus on that because I'm a contrarian and I don't want to go that way. But I do want to talk about love in a very different aspect. Those students, I think, learned through George this power of love and through those poems. And those who have studied him afterwards have learned about the power of love. I want to talk about agency as a track towards self-love. Self-agency as a track towards self-love. And I want to use that as a lens that we will look through George's work. The reason I'm going to do that is because I'm proposing that if we have a sense of agency, a strong sense of agency, that will lead to a strong sense of self-love, which is super important. If that's true, then again, everything that those students learned, we're still learning 100 years later. I want to start with the idea of agency, though, because, again, I think I was an adult when I encountered the use of agency this way. So, just to be clear for the whole audience, when I'm talking about agency in this respect, what I'm talking about is, this is the definition, the ability to choose for ourselves, to act as we choose, and to live independently of the desires or wishes of another. That is what agency is. If you think about literature, or maybe you think about movies, I think this dynamic happens a lot. Let's say you have a movie where someone is very, very unpopular at the beginning of the movie, and then you have a bully, and everything that they do for the first half of the movie is in response to the bully. Everything is a reaction. Every decision they make is guided by, I don't want to be around this person, or I need to escape this, or I need to deal with this situation, right? So the movie starts with a lack of agency for the main character. At some point in the movie, it switches, right? And the villain of the story is the one that ends up unpopular or bullied or in jail, all right, and losing agency. That's how we use it in literature a lot. I'm also going to propose this. If we think of agency from the context of being able to do what we want when we want and to choose action, then we might think of times in history when folks had less and less agency. And if we thought about those, we certainly would think about chattel slavery as those folks having less and less agency, right, for themselves because of this system or because of this person or because of these things acting upon them. I'm going to use that as we get into talk about George Moses' work. I want to give one more example just in case, though. I use this with students. So let's imagine you overhear a conversation between two students. And the purpose of this conversation is, I want to empower myself. I want this to be encouraging. I want to boast about my accomplishments. I'm proud. And so the conversation that you overhear is me saying, the teacher gave me a good grade today. It made my day. It felt like a new door was open to me. Now, if we say it the right way, maybe it still gives the idea of agency, right? Or the idea of empowerment. But if we really think about that sentence, who gets the agency in that sentence? The teacher gets the agency in that sentence. The teacher gave, the teacher opened the door, The teacher made that person's day, right? Now, if we rephrase this and say, I earned a good grade and I made my day with that one. I mean, it felt like I opened up this new door of possibilities for my future. That's empowering, right? That's what we intended. That's what we want. That's the idea of agency. The idea to claim for ourselves something. Okay, with that in mind, I want to talk about the intersection of agency and love. Here's a quote from Eleanor Shakiba. Self-agency is more important than self-esteem. Derived from that, we can say self-agency is the foundation of self-love, and vice versa. Self-love, the foundation of having agency, a sense of agency for the self. One more quote. Agency involves controlling what you can control, but also involves accepting what you cannot control. We'll come back to those quotes as we explore the work. All right, I'm going to read the first half of a poem from George Moses Horton, published in 1829. The title is On Liberty and Slavery. Alas, and am I born for this? To wear this slavish chain, deprived of all created bliss through hardship, toil, and pain? How long have I in bondage lain, and languished to be free? Alas, and must I still complain, deprived of liberty? O heaven, and is there no relief this side the silent grave, to soothe the pain, to quell the grief and anguish of a slave? I want us to encounter this work again after I say something. North Carolina statutes on slavery, Michael alluded to this, made it illegal for slaves to hire out their own time. It also made it illegal for slaves to teach how or be taught how to read and write. The title of this poem, I like to enter poems through their title. The title of this poem, in 1829, while George was very much still in bondage, the title is On Liberty and Slavery. An enslaved person, when you first encounter this title, what you are being told is that an enslaved person is going to tell you their thoughts about freedom and about slavery. All right, that's agency. In a time where you are already getting into some activities that are not looked well upon, you are declaring, these are my thoughts on freedom and on slavery. Let's stay with the title for a second. During that time, just as we sometimes hear people try to do today, during that time, there were some who, in order to sway generally other white folks and poorer white folks, right, in order to sway them to be able to be agreeable to slavery, what they would say was that enslaved people don't mind really that much, right? They don't really they're indifferent about their freedom. In fact, they lack the emotional and intellectual capacity to really do something with their freedom. And this was something that was perpetuated. Let's re-encounter the work. Re-encounter the work under the standpoint that some people are saying that slaves are indifferent and they don't have the emotional capacity or the intellectual capacity. Am I born for this? Deprived, hardship, toil, pain, languish to be free, I still complain. This is from an actively enslaved person who is taking the agency to say, no, I want to be free. I want to be free. This is important to me. And I'm not indifferent about slavery. No, I don't want it. I don't want to be enslaved. I've seen what it is. I've experienced it. I don't want it. There were other poets who came before George Moses Horton who talked very harshly against slavery. For example, Phyllis Wheatley. For example, Jupiter Hammond. However, I will point out two things about those great, great poets. Phyllis Wheatley was in Boston, Massachusetts, in the north, and Jupiter Hammond was in Long Island, New York, and they were both at the time of their, most raucous, free or emancipated. George Moses Horton was enslaved in 1829, and he's saying, is there no relief this side the silent grave? I want liberty. Is there no liberty this side of the grave? You know what that sounds like? It It sounds like give me liberty or give me death. This is George Moses Horton in 1829, making this very clear. To describe the condition of slavery, to complain about it, to denounce it, to essentially say, give me liberty or give me death, to assume the agency, that is something he can say, that is something he can not only complain about, but affect change for, I think is a beautiful kind of defiance and agency. That's really only the half of that first poem, though. I want to get into another poem by George Moses Horton. Is this for me? Yes. That's so considerate. I appreciate that. This poem is called Death of a Carriage Horse. I like to encounter the poem through its title. So, Death of a Carriage Horse, we are talking about a workhorse. We're talking about the death of a workhorse, and that's what I'm presenting to you as this poem. I was a harness horse, constrained to travel weak or strong, with orders from oppressing force, push along, push along. I had no space of rest, and took at forks the roughest prong, still by the cruel driver pressed, push along, push along. Vain strove the idle bird to charm me with her artless song, but pleasure lingered from the word, push along, push along. The order of the day was push, the peal of every tongue. The only word was, all the way, push along, push along. Thus, to my journey's end, had I to travel right or wrong, till death, my sweet and favored friend, bade me from life to push along. Now, the title tells us this is about a carriage horse. The title tells us this is about the death of a workhorse. And perhaps at that time, because it wasn't uncommon for a poet to use allegory as opposed to direct protest against slavery. Maybe this is an easier entry for some, because the conscripted labor of a horse, right? The labor exploitation of a horse, the coerced obedience of a horse is maybe the kind of thing back then that we could, we could think okay about. Like, it's a horse. But obviously here, the horse is not a horse, right? Obviously here, the horse represents enslaved people. And so here we are with George Moses Horton again, in direct opposition to the thing that was hurting him. I want to go back to this idea of push along, keep working, keep working. In the second stanza, still by the cruel driver pressed. What a clever double entendre. Because the driver of the horse is saying push along, but that echoes in our mind maybe the words of the slave driver, push along, push along. I don't think George is at all thinking that people won't understand what he's saying. Right? This is direct opposition. Also, the use of a horse as a stand-in also represents the further dehumanizing nature of the work. Also, especially poetically, we would expect a poet or a person to say, life is sweet. But here at the last stanza, death is referred to as sweet. Till death, my sweet and favored friend. Why? Push along. We work until we die. The horse, us, we work until we die. Push along, push along. I also don't encounter this work as being a poem of sadness, by the way. I encounter this poem as being an intense work of defiance. I encounter this work as being, to speak of this is defiance. To know how to read and write is defiance. To buy your own time is defiance. To wrap that inside of a metaphor is defiance. To appeal for change through the arts, which, by the way, I think we're all doing here today. Such wonderful art on display here today. Is an act of beautiful defiance. I'm going to say a little bit more about George Moses, which will be reiterating a little bit from Michael's work earlier, and hopefully adding a little bit to it. I want to talk specifically about George's emancipation. Because during the Civil War, as Michael brought out, UNC Chapel Hill campus was not a place George could be. So he's there. The Emancipation Proclamation happened in 1863, which is true. If we know why Juneteenth exists, we know why the slaves were not free in most areas in 1863. It was because the Union troops had to come in and enforce it, because those slave owners were not letting their slaves go, and they were not going to let them know that they were emancipated or free. Someone was going to have to come and enforce that. So in 1865, George is still on the plantation, and he hears that Union soldiers are in Raleigh. Raleigh is a 30-mile walk. For sure, those soldiers were going to make their way to this plantation at some point. George hears that they're in Raleigh 30 miles away, and walks. He walks to meet the Union soldiers in Raleigh. George was 68 at that time. So he was 66 in 1863. 1865, he was 2 years older, so he was 68. Almost 70 years old, walking 30 miles to Raleigh to secure his own freedom. And Michael said, this freedom has been dangled in front of his face like this unreachable carrot for about 3 decades. Because once he started in 1829 of selling fruits and vegetables, and then also selling his poems for 25 cents each, sometimes 75 cents each, and the students started, coming around, the teachers started coming around, he eventually got a job as a handyman at the university. So he was making about $3 a week. And he would go back and say, I want to buy my freedom. No. But I'll let you hire out your time. You can hire out your time so you don't have to work in the field. You just pay me what you're making. Okay. He was hoping that with the sale of the first book, that there would be enough money. And there actually was, there's some record that there was an agreement kind of in place. But then the rules changed. I think Michael said there was benefactors, but no, the owner, no. And the owner at one time was Horton Sr., and then it was passed on to the son, Horton, when they divided the property. But no, right? So this maybe, can I hire out my time? Can I please buy my freedom? This goes on for 3 decades. George hears Union soldiers are in Raleigh. I'm not waiting 1 more minute. I'm gone. I'm saying that this is agency. I'm saying I'm taking control where I can keep control, and I'm going to secure this myself. I want to talk about one more thing about how I intersect with George Moses Horton. So when he walked his way to freedom, he found his way under the charge of Captain Banks. And Captain Banks would go on to be the one that actually made it possible for his 3rd book to be published, his final book, Naked Genius. But he traveled with Captain Banks for about 3 months. During that 3 months, he walked 300 miles during that 3 months at the age of 68. During those walks, he walked through Concord, North Carolina, I believe in June. June of 1865, he walked through Concord, North Carolina. Where we live, I can throw a rock and hit the city limit sign for Concord, North Carolina. So I feel like at my birth and now at my adulthood, I'm crossing physical paths with this poet who meant so much historically. Let's talk about the final book and the first poem in that book. The final book was named Naked Genius. I like to encounter things through their titles. So 1865, he was truly free now in 1865. That's when this book comes out. Don't know when he wrote the poem or the poem was in the book, but the book came out in 1865. And the book is titled Naked Genius. A recently formerly enslaved person is touting genius in the title of this work at a time when we are doubting the emotional and intellectual capacity of enslaved people. Genius is in the title. I'm going to read the first poem in that book. George Moses Horton, Myself. I feel myself in need of the inspiring strains of ancient lore, my heart to lift, my empty mind to feed, and all the world explore. I know that I am old, and can never recover what is past. But for the future, may some light unfold and soar from age's blast. I feel resolved to try, my wish to prove, my calling to pursue, or mount up from the earth into the sky to show what heaven can do. My genius from a boy has fluttered like a bird within my heart, but could not thus confine her powers employ, impatient to depart. She, like a restless bird, would spread her wing, her power to be unfurled, and let her songs be loudly heard and dart from world to world. I like to encounter poems by their title. The last name Horton was given to George because that was the slave owner's name. That was the master's name. The title is George Moses Horton, Myself. This is a reclaiming of personhood. It's a reclaiming of identity. It's a reclaiming of agency. Myself. In fact, if we look at some of the words in this poem, myself, my heart, my wish, my genius. This is agency. In situations where maybe the agency is limited, someone is saying, but I'm going to take every bit that I can. Despite his achievements in this poem, he's saying he still desires to learn, to grow, to explore. I want to remind us of the two quotes we said at the beginning about this intersection between agency and love. One was, agency involves controlling what you can control, but also involves accepting what you cannot control. The line in the poem is, I know that I am old and never can recover what is past, but I am accepting I've grown older. I am accepting there's things I've missed out on that I cannot get back. I am accepting that these 30 years were hard. I'm accepting that the years before that may be even harder. But the future may some light unfold. Here's the other quote that we talked about. Self-agency is more important than self-esteem. I want to go back to this line in the poem, my genius from a boy. Besides the fact that he's referring to himself as a genius, right, which we would say maybe that's self-esteem. But I'm saying this is agency, which then affects self-esteem. Because here I am, I can say this now. When I was a kid, I taught myself how to read. I taught myself how to compose poems and just keep them in my memory. I went to a university where they were trying to make fun of me and sold poems and made a living. I took a route that shouldn't be available to me. No, my genius from a boy. That's agency. I'm claiming that. And that's leading into self-esteem. And it's leading into self-love. This genius, the next line is, my genius from a boy has fluttered like a bird within my heart. So he's referring to his genius as a bird, right? And the bird, in the next line, could not thus confine her powers employed. But we're not even thinking about the years of confinement right now, because the next line is impatient to depart. I was never defined by my spirit being confined. I'm defined because I was ready to go. I was impatient to depart. I am ready to go. And what's defining me right now is my agency, my genius. I'm making a point here that I want to circle back to about love, about agency. I think my point really is about legacy. It's about Black history. It's about change making and way making. It's about trailblazing. It's about taking your shot when the time is right. And the point, I think, is this. Genius persists. Obstacles persist, but so do openings to quiet the obstacles. Naysayers persist, but so do opportunities to prove them wrong. Wisdom persists. Art persists. The spirit of overcoming persists. Agency persists. Love persists. So the legacy of George Moses Horton persists. I may perform a poem that I wrote back when I was really learning about George Moses Horton for the first time. But also in spaces like this, I really want to prioritize discussion. So I think just based on time, let's think about Q&A, and if that discussion leaves time, I'll perform a poem. If it doesn't, maybe let's prioritize the discussion.
I'd love for you to perform that poem and then go straight into Q&A if that would be amenable to you.
If you are twisting my arm. The way I'm going to start this poem is what I was thinking about for George Moses Horton was this rapper from the 90s named Biggie Smalls. I don't know if you heard of Biggie Smalls. One of the things that Biggie Smalls was famous for was he would go into a booth. He wouldn't write his lyrics down. He would listen to the song, the music. He would compose the song in his head, and then he would go into the booth and create the song. One of the songs that came from that process, all right, this is call and response. I'm going to say something and you say, now you know. And if you don't know, now you know. And if you don't know, now you know. George Moses Horton was born a slave, worked a tobacco plantation in Northampton County, North Carolina, taught himself to read, but he could not write, so he began composing poems in his head. He was Biggie Smalls before Biggie Smalls, sold his freestyles, became notorious. George says, let me tell you about the time my uncle timed my own passage along Drinking Gourd's skyline, how I became an hourglass with water for sand, born sinner, opposite of a winner like most of us. He never made enough money selling his poems to buy freedom, but he was able to buy his time, meaning he paid wages to his owner in lieu of working the fields. I led my own search party, became rusted porch swing, no good reason for anyone to stay. Remember when I used to eat sardines for dinner? He was the first person to publish a book while in slavery, and one of the first to publicly protest his own slavery in poetry. You say run, cross river, feet bare and bleeding in thicket. I swallowed the ripeness of my tongue to blow up like you thought I would. In 1909, UNC professor Collier Cobb dismisses Horton's anti-slavery themes. Says George never really wanted more liberty than he had. He was just fond of playing to the grandstand. You don't think I wanted to run. Didn't try. Didn't bury my dreams. Hope is enough water to drown in. You know very well who you are. Don't let him hold you down. Reach for the stars. When Civil War came, George Moses walked from his plantation all the way to Raleigh, North Carolina, found Union soldiers, joined himself to their stagecoach, becoming the first poet to ever get free on stage. I never thought it could happen, this freedom stuff, but I pushed. Will you push? Get free, walk in your own shackles, use this life as collateral for this dream. Do whatever it takes to live the life you live, because you went from... It's a good thing George knew he was free, even before emancipation was a shy salesman standing on Master's front porch. When dust licks your mouth dry as cotton, from the Mississippi down to the East Coast, sun, kiss your body so deep it leaves hickeys you can't hide when your dreams are delayed and deferred, and it seems you will never have more than this, never be more than this. That is when you get free. For George, being free was an ideal, but getting free was an ethic. It was work hard, be more than you came with, come with everything you are, leave it all on stage. George says, you getting free, or you just buying time? What does free mean to you? What you willing to do to get it? Biggie said, stereotype of black male, misunderstood. And it's still all good. They can put you in a box, but they can't stop you from thinking outside. Biggie had a dream and made it happen. George had a dream and made it happen. You have a dream, and is there any obstacle that could ever stop a dream? No. No. And if you don't know, baby, David.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, Charlotte Poet Laureate, Junious Jay Ward. All right, and he has agreed to stay up here and take some of your questions. And following that, he will be in the pink room signing copies of his books. All right, so who's got some questions? I'm gonna
How long have you been writing poetry?
I started writing poetry seriously in like 5th or 6th grade. And then by 8th grade, that turned into writing rap songs. And then my freshman year in college, I was in Sean's class. I don't know Sean's last name. And he asked me after a class for an assignment. And he said, this is what you should be doing. And then I did what most people would probably do in that situation. I stared at him blankly, and then I stopped writing for 10 years. I picked up writing again as an adult, I think in my late 20s, and then never looked back since
So
then.
a total of how many years?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So like maybe 35?
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
You made a statement earlier. You said you made a profound statement. You said that when the slave owners, people on the top level would say we don't need much, right? The slaves, right? We don't need much, but the slaves are struggling, so we need more, right? We need help. It's pressure, and it's a statement. When you say that, we do it today. Those that have and have nots, where we like the minute we elevate, we start seeing people in the poor level start saying they don't need much, but then also because we have much. Because let's be honest, most of us, once you make it, if you are part of the hierarchy of America, the have, we don't go around poor people. We don't go around poor people like that. We don't stay around them. We don't deal with them. I'm the same way. I don't go nobody, right? I support people. That's what we don't do nothing. We serve them. But when you say that, that's how we live in society now, as the have and have not, that we look at a person who doesn't have anything, say they don't need much, but then a person on the bottom says they need more to get ahead. The same, possibly, we are still in the same construct that even he was in now.
Yeah, I mean, so let me say this and see if this is in agreement with what you're saying. Because I do very much believe that so back then, the quickest way to get people on board with something that otherwise is morally irreprehensible is to present them an alternate truth about those people. Like when slaves actually started being brought over to America, also came the stories of cannibalism, also came the stories of rape and incest and that kind of thing, because that dehumanized the people and made it easier for people to get on board with, okay, well then they can be enslaved. The idea that they also don't mind slavery, or the idea that without the structure of slavery, they wouldn't be able to prosper or do anything for themselves, that is also like propaganda. Now, do we see that same kind of propaganda today? Absolutely. Do we see the kind of propaganda where it's like, all right, well, if we look back, 100 years from now, we look back on today, and people ask us, how did they get away with treating people like that? Well, the reason is because if you convince half the people that these folks aren't deserving of the same liberties, they're not deserving of this, or that they don't even care about those liberties, right? Because they voted for it too, right? All of that is still going on today for sure. It is the easiest way to control people into allowing something that otherwise seems crazy. Does that kind of harmonize with what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying like politically. So I want to ask a question because I'm 17 years. I'm 39, but I've been 18 years in political, federal, local, and state level politics, all that stuff. So I've traveled many places, many things before I hit 39, 4 years old. And when you said that, I was like, I've seen that politically, where a rep says or a politician says that we vote for says they don't need much. Just give them a little food. Just give them this, give them that, right? Let's keep them where they need to be, right? They don't need much. But then a person, I've served nonprofit, I've worked with nonprofits where we have served people who don't have much. Even I don't talk half of them. I don't touch them. I don't even go to any communities. But yeah, I serve the people that go in the communities. And I've seen where from the communities, they need more support, but then those that support the money, those that have not, that support the infrastructure, say they don't need much. And I said, wow, that's profound that one person says they don't need much that works in that area, but the person who doesn't go near them has no connection. I said, that's profound. Like, we're still in the same constructs as we were before from his time period. same storytelling, same stories. It was interesting. Even Charlotte goes through it today. People in the bottom don't have much. They're told you don't need much, and then the bottom and the top says, well, they don't need much because why? And they're sold the same story, but then on the bottom, they're like, well, we need more. We need more support. We need you to stop holding us back. And they can't get ahead. Why? Because they're constantly told from the top they don't need more.
No, yeah, I agree. Yeah. Appreciate that. Yeah.
You mentioned students. Where do you teach?
Wherever someone asks me to go. Yeah. So I'm doing everything from Title I schools to private schools to from middle school, high school. Well, no, elementary, middle school, high school. Yeah, wherever I'm asked, I generally go.
Keep it going.
Thank you.
You really resonate, I bet, with especially the young ones and
I hope so.
the ones who need to understand agency.
Yeah.
In a true sense across all colors, races, everything. Especially today. Good for you.
Thank you.
I'm almost glad you didn't say, well, I teach at UNC or something.
Yeah.
You have the freedom to really bring freedom.
Yeah, thank you.
Great.
Yeah.
I love your presentation.
Thank you.
I've got a question, Jay.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you had some common ground, with George Moses Horton in terms of like physical proximity to where he was born, where you grew up, and then in Concord where he passed through. It occurs to me that you've got something else in common, which is that both of you are both performance poets as well as poets, through the written word on the page.
Yeah.
Because of course before he could write, it was spoken word. He was keeping it all in his head. And so for you as a poet, what is the difference between those two? The spoken word, the performance poetry versus the poetry in your books that.
I love that question. So for me, poetry is poetry, and I think part of the reason I say that is because I started in the performance background before getting any other kind of formal training. Here's how I liken it, because I think sometimes it feels like maybe spoken word or performance poetry is so far different than like academic poetry or published poetry. I don't think the gap or the chasm is actually there. I think it's like invented. Poetry, we all use the same poetic devices. We all use the same tools to write. I think the difference is a difference of medium. So if I was a visual artist, the technique I would use, I assume, for doing a charcoal painting versus doing an acrylic, versus doing aerosol, right? Not only is the medium different that I'm using and the tools different that I'm using, but like the canvas is different. The canvas might be brick. The canvas might be asphalt. The canvas might be actual canvas, or it might be a wall, right? All those things make a difference on how you approach it, but we're still using the same training and the same tools. So for me, like a performance poet has at their advantage this emotional connection with the audience. They have to their advantage some of the physical things that I can do that I won't be able to do on paper. But on paper, the poet has the advantage of line breaks and enjambments and how the words physically appear on the paper, which then dictates how you read it and how you consume it. So like the readers, depending on those choices, the reader's experience is different. To me, it's the same thing. It's just that if I approach a spoken word poem, I'm not gonna write it the way I would a poem on the page, because the reader or the audience is going to encounter it a certain way. So I'm gonna write it the way they're gonna encounter it. Does that answer the question?
Yes. Yeah. I guess you can't hear enjambment.
Right.
I mean, with your ear, you can see it with your eyes, but if it's as it's being read, it flows through.
Yeah. Although I will say I'm working on an essay right now about like how enjambment works or how line breaks work in songs or in spoken word poems. I'll give you an example because this will help me like figure it out as I try to put it on the paper. You've heard the song "I'm Coming Up on the Rough Side of the Mountain." Mm-hmm. Like think about how that works as enjambment or how that works as line break. I'm coming up. That's a whole thought. On the rough side, I didn't know you were going there. But now it's still a complete thought. Of the mountain. Okay, I brought it home, right? The enjambments work like breath there, to where, like, if I was going to write that poem on paper, that's exactly how I write it. Because you are encountering this the same way you would encounter it on the paper as a library. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Yeah.
So you're talking about agency, and certainly Robert Moses Horton and what he did in the poetry. And it was really, I love the way you presented it. It went into me very easily, and that doesn't happen often with poetry. Going back to the academic roots, the way it was presented. Switching to agency and going into whether it's gospel music or whether it was field music or whether it was just the performance music. Probably, I guess I'm getting at either around the time of emancipation or afterwards. Were there comparable songs that have that sense of agency that you've come across in history? Not that you need to write them and list them for me today, but as a mechanism, have you seen that in the way you outlined in the poetry for Horton?
That's an interesting trajectory to.
Or did David Foster take them and then present them for others? Or, that could be someone else was their agent, or hopefully not their presenter, like the teacher example you gave, but really was a way of making them agent.
No, I appreciate that question because it gives me something to think about. So when I'm thinking about George Moses Horton in particular, I think it's easy to see how his work was influenced by those Wesleyan hymnals and the Bible itself. It was very important to him. And I think that kind of sound and that kind of gospel feel almost, or field song feel, like permeates a lot of the work. As far as contemporaries of that time, or like after that time that took over on agency, I don't know that I've looked at that enough in that way to know the answer, but now I'm intrigued to know it. I will say that I attended a craft lecture one time where the Black National Anthem, the Negro National Anthem, was sung, but it was sung this way. Because the way I encountered that national anthem as a kid was at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, the station would go off, because that's how back far it was. The station would go off, and they would have this choir, I think it was the Howard University choir, I think, singing the Negro National Anthem, and that's how I always knew it. I went to this craft lecture, and it was Bread Loaf. So at Bread Loaf, most of the attendees there are not black, and we were in this big theater, and the craft lecturer started singing without the words on the paper. He just started singing the Negro National Anthem, and all of a sudden, all these people were singing it, but from disparate parts of the room, where all the black folks were, and this song starts rising up. And I can't say whether or not that speaks directly to agency, but I can tell that it emotionally impacted me in a way that I was not prepared for that day. So I'm saying all that to say, long-winded way to say, I think there is some merit into looking into exactly that, and I probably will. So thank you. Yeah.
Also, when you think of George Moses Horton, how was his family impacted? Did you find anything about his family? Because he goes away and he comes back, but what does he come back to?
Yeah. I could not find much about his family.
But there's another thing too. He was in a system where, like you're saying, there were people that said, okay, he's probably content, he's just a slave. But in that system, there were those that did stick out, that were not, confined to that system and broke that system. When we think about Nat Turner, and then we think about people that broke the system just a little bit, just to say, okay, it can be done.
Yeah.
And then it was the slave masters that knocked that system back down, because they said, okay, if we let this enslaved person go on, he's gonna convince these other enslaved people that they can get free. We need to sell him. And I'm saying that because that actually happened in the torrents of enslavement They had one enslaved person, I think it was John Thomas, that said, we need to sell him because if he stays here, the rest of these enslaved people will get the idea that they can win.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you. Your poem is amazing. It's so well crafted, and the history is really fascinating, and the timeline and everything. I love history, so I love that. And so just a question, I'm thinking about this idea of self-agency as a path to self-love. But I'm a little bit struggling with that concept because, so I'm a Christian, so I read a lot of the Bible. So the Bible's main idea is that we are actually all sinners, and so we don't have agency. And then the other main thrust is that our primary goal is to love God and people. So I don't know how the concept of self-love jives with the idea of love for neighbor or love for God. I'm wondering if you can speak to that or.
Yeah. I'll first say that there's seldom any situation where agency is 100% 0%. There's seldom a situation where someone has zero agency. Even in when it seems like they have no agency, maybe they have 1%. But there's seldom 0%. And there's very seldom 100%. There's very seldom a time when somebody who has a lot of control actually has complete control over everything and has agency over everything. So I do think that there's levels of agency for the self and what that means. I think that's why it ties into the idea of control what you can't control and accept what you can, right? The other thing I'll say is, I'm trying to tiptoe around this because even if we both say we're Christians, that doesn't mean we still believe the same thing type of thing. Yeah. But so my encountering of the Bible and of Christianity is that we are free agents, meaning God gave the commands, God has the Bible and the template, but ultimately we make the choice of whether we're going to follow it or not. We make the choice and the research to say whether this is right or wrong or not. I mean, that whole idea of right or wrong and being able to choose for yourself, and going back to, I won't go too deep, but going back to the apple and the not the apple, sorry, but the fruit in the garden or so forth, it still involves choice. So even if the command is love thy neighbor, you do have the choice. It's that because of your own research and your own love and your own relationship with your religion or with God, you have decided that my choice is I'm going to do what this says. But ultimately, you do very much have the choice of does that make sense? Ultimately, we all very much have the choice of what we're going to do in our lives and whether we're going to follow certain things. So yeah, if I'm gonna love my neighbor, there's even agency within that, right? There's agency within how you're going to do that, how you're going to show love to your neighbor. Because love for your neighbor could be, you know what, this is the third time my neighbor has done this, my actual neighbor, and I'm gonna let it slide because I want to fuss him out and say some unkind words. But you know what? Agency is saying I'm going to show love to my neighbor by not harassing them the way I want to. You know what I mean? I think there's levels within that. I don't know if this answers the question or if there's a deeper question behind the question. But yeah, ultimately, I think we still have the choice, and I think that just speaking from my own encountering of the Bible and of God, God gave us the free will. He gave us the commands, but he also gave us the free will, and we are very much free agents in terms of making our choices and decisions on whether to do this thing or how to do it.
Sorry, that's a huge question.
No problem. I also ramble a little bit because I'm working the question out as I'm answering it, so I appreciate it.
All right, I think that is a great note on which to make a transition. I would like to, first of all, thank Jay so much for an amazing lecture, and I'd like to thank all of you for your questions as well. What's next? We're going to ask Natasha and Jennifer to take us out with one more love song, and that'll give Jay a chance to take a breath and then transition into the pink room where he will be signing books. So ladies and gentlemen, one more time, Natasha Witherspoon, accompanied by Jennifer Gosselin.
Oh wow, that was amazing. Can we please give Jen one more? Absolutely beautiful. So, as we close today on Valentine's Day, during Black History Month, on historic Southern soil, I wanted to end not with longing, not with lament, but with gratitude. This final piece is Weitbruch by Richard Strauss, German for dedication. In this song, the speaker reflects on suffering, distance, and torment, but ultimately gives thanks to the one who brought healing. Each stanza ends with the same words, be thanked, habe Dank. What moves me about this piece is that it does not deny pain, it acknowledges it, and then chooses gratitude anyway. As a Black woman in America, as an artist, as a mother, as a survivor, I understand what it means to come through something, to be carried, to be restored, to find love again in community, in faith, and in purpose. Black history is not only struggle, it is endurance, it is creativity, it is joy reclaimed. So I offer this final song of dedication to the ancestors whose choices carried through bondage, to the mentors who made space in classical music, to the love that sustains, and to every person here who continues to choose light over despair. Habe Dank, be thanked.
Amazing. Thanks again to Natasha and Jennifer. Thanks to all of you for being here and for your support. Please join us in March in Statesville for Irish Connections and later in March for our Hearts United Gala for Brevard's Chapel. And now Jay Ward will be in the pink room signing copies of his book, and we hope to see you there.